Now let's go over now to Maynooth and Sharon.
Thanks, David. Well, in the last hour or so, Catherine Connolly has told students in Maynooth that she is running for president as an independent candidate with an independent mind. It marked her last stop in a day of canvassing, which began earlier today in County Kildare. Our reporter Conor Hunt spent the day on the campaign trail with her.
There was a warm welcome for Catherine Connolly in Naas this morning as she was quickly surrounded by well-wishers. A couple of hecklers too. These things happen, she said. The first stop was to a local community centre and to an age-friendly choir. A sing-along followed. These campaign stops can also be about photo ops, the cameras clicking away as Catherine Connolly was put through her paces in some chair yoga. Keen to show her vigour for the job perhaps, she says her campaign has the wind in its sails.
The momentum has built up. The momentum was there from day one, I have to say, when I declared in July. But the intensity of that momentum has built up and I'm absolutely delighted. And you can see from today that people clearly want to engage with the President. They want to be heard.
She also dropped into a men's shed in Clane where she told those gathered that her husband was a woodwork teacher. She then visited Scull y Dálaigh, a Gael school in Leixlip. At the Gheata na Scola, support for this Irish-speaking candidate was clear.
I'm very much in favour of her, yeah, definitely. Well, she's very popular here today, I'll have to say that. Really good.
Definitely a fan. She'll definitely be getting my vote anyway.
Catherine Connolly's supporters believe she's been in front in this campaign so far. The challenge for her team will be whether or not any lead she has built up can be maintained over the next week and a half in the lead up to polling day. Her canvassing ended this evening here in Maynooth. The Connolly campaign rolls on. Conor Hunt, RTE News.
Well, I'm joined now by independent candidate in this presidential election, Catherine Connolly. Thank you for coming to speak to us this evening on 6-1. If we could first... Thank you. We're here this evening to talk about, first of all, the role of the President. What kind of a President would you be?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be here on the campus of Maynooth University, and particularly from the tumultuous welcome I got today from the students. It was just full of vibrancy and it was wonderful. And the same reception throughout the day as I moved from town to town, Naas, Selbridge, Clane and so on. And I was in an all-Irish school and so on. Your question in relation to what kind of presidency, I think the electorate have a clear choice to elect an independent-minded person with an independent mind who will reflect the core values of our people, who will be a voice for peace in a very volatile world, who will build on our experience as a post-colonial country, as a country that experienced a terrible famine, and as a country that has successfully resolved peacefully the conflict in the north.
Will you be a president who constitutionally toes the line, or will you push the boat out? You've said that you will speak out on issues, but how much will you speak out, because it's an apolitical office?
Well, I've had many different roles, as you know, Sharon, and I worked as a barrister for more than 20 years. I worked as a clinical psychologist and a teacher, and in all those roles, and Lascan Corlin, the first female elected Lascan Corlin in the history of the state, in all of those roles I have demonstrated that I act with fairness, with professionalism, and I will bring that experience to bear in my role as President. I'm fully conscious of the Constitution. I have looked at it and read it a number of times, and quite clearly the role of President must comply with the Constitution, and I would carry out my duties in compliance with the Constitution. But there are many different articles, and Article 12.8 obliges me to take a solemn public vow to serve the welfare of the people of Ireland.
OK, and I'd like to ask you about the people that you will be serving, because you are a candidate of the left, even though you are an independent. And there are some people who believe that your ideals are very far to the left. And some people have bristled at your comments about Hamas, about the US being an imperial power. And I'm just wondering, would you tone that down as President? Because some people are worried about that.
I'm not sure who's worried about that, because if you look at my record in the Dáil, it's second to none. And it's based on a rational, reasonable woman who reads, carries out research before she speaks, reflects, and then makes a contribution in the Dáil. That's my record, with the help of my good team around me. I will continue to work in that manner. I think it's vital that we have a president who has courage, who has integrity, and is unafraid to speak out when necessary.
Will you
to
speak out if
the
it goes
welfare
against government policies, though? Because that's something people are perhaps afraid of.
The policy is determined by government. I, more than anyone else, know that from my own background. But the President has to reflect the concerns of the people of Ireland. And as you know, Sharon, I've been out since the 3rd week of July. I haven't missed a day canvassing. I made a very conscious decision to announce my candidacy in July, to allow for scrutiny, to allow for questions to be put. And I've travelled the length and breadth of Ireland. Today I'm in Maynooth, tomorrow I'm in Meath, and so on. I have stood before, I don't know how many journalists, repeatedly. I have had 4 open forums with 4 independent chairs so that I would allow questions to be asked. The
One
people
question
deserve
that has been asked again and again, and people are still curious about it because it calls into question your judgment. You hired somebody who has a conviction for firearms offences. Do you regret hiring that person to work in Leinster House?
Yeah, this goes to the very heart of what rehabilitation is about. And I employed somebody who was absolutely a model prisoner, a model of rehabilitation. She didn't serve the full sentence because she was such a model. And then I offered her employment. We complied with all the rules. I complied with all the rules. The real question here is how did this information become public? For what purpose?
Is that the part you regret, though? Because do you regret that it has called into question your judgment?
I don't think so at all. What does rehabilitation mean? What does it mean? We have somebody who's fully rehabilitated, has seen the error of her ways and is going forward. Is that not something to be championed?
But you're not answering the question about judgment there. I mean, you're talking about rehabilitation, which most people would say absolutely.
Absolutely.
But would you hire somebody with a firearms conviction to work in Leinster House, the seat of Parliament?
I go back to the question again. What does rehabilitation mean? This person came highly recommended as somebody who was fully rehabilitated.
Okay, you've made that point, and you're not really answering the question about judgment. Can I just want to move on to something?
To make the point
I think you've made the point,
It's very important to actually hear that I took advice, that the person came highly recommended. And
you don't regret any of it?
I think it's a perfect example of rehabilitation. Okay. And it speaks to a bigger issue. What does rehabilitation mean?
I just want to move on because we don't have very much time. Most people in Ireland are pro-European, and you're on the record as having voted against many EU treaties. Do you believe that Ireland, do you have any concerns about Ireland being part of the European Union at this point?
I have no concerns. I'm absolutely committed to European. I've spent a year in Germany.
Do you believe Russia is a threat to Europe?
If I just answer your questions, you're asking me a question.
Well, you've answered it.
You're not allowing me to
answer. Europe.
Being constructively critical of Europe, particularly the direction that it's going in terms of increased spending on the militarisation of Europe, is something I have great concerns about. And I've had those concerns for a very long time and expressed them publicly on the record. That's not to be anti-European.
One person said today, a former
Taoiseach,
Mary Harney, said about your stance on Europe, she said today you would be happier to attack European defence than attacking Russia's war in Ukraine. Is that the case?
This has been put to me repeatedly, and particularly by the other candidate who says that she listens. And she's repeatedly said that I've never condemned Russia. That is so far from the truth. It would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. I'm on the record for condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine over and over. What I have pointed out is that as a sovereign, independent, neutral state, we have a duty to call out the abuse of power by wherever it occurs.
Okay.
So if we go back to America and the funding and the resourcing of genocide in Palestine through Israel, then we must question that equally in the same way that we condemn the invasion of Ukraine by Russia.
Catherine Connolly, I'm sorry, we're right out of time. Thank you for speaking to us on the 6-1 this evening.